47 minutes, 12 seconds. That was the record. Commander Thrakal, a Govian berserker who once fought a plasma bear with his bare claws, lasted 47 minutes and 12 seconds in Chamber 9 before he broke. When the doors finally opened, he emerged screaming. His voice shattered the observation glass. His claws were bloody from scratching the reinforced walls. He begged them to make it stop, even though it had already ended. The psychiatric evaluation took 6 months. He never fully recovered. That was the record. 47 minutes, 12 seconds. In 247 years, across 10,000 test subjects from every known species in the Galactic Alliance, nobody had lasted longer. 47 minutes was the wall, the absolute limit of sentient psychology under controlled torture conditions. The alarm was chiming now, facility-wide. The same alarm that had sounded exactly once before when Commander Thrakal set his record. 47 minutes, 13 seconds. A new record. Inside Chamber 9, visible through the observation window, Cadet Cade Brennan of Earth lay on his side. His chest rose and fell in the slow, steady rhythm of deep sleep. His arm was tucked under his head as a pillow. His face was peaceful, relaxed, almost comfortable. The chamber walls were cycling through images of cosmic horror. Lovecraftian entities with geometries that shouldn't exist. The temperature was minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The sonic generators were producing frequencies that should have liquefied his internal organs. Cade Brennan shifted slightly, adjusting his position. Then he continued sleeping. Instructor Zarketh stared through the observation window with all 4 of his eyes. His feeding tendrils hung limp in absolute shock. Around him, 57 personnel from a dozen different species crowded the observation room, all of them silent, all of them watching. Commander Thaxvel, the facility director, pushed through the crowd. His massive thoracian frame made others instinctively step back. His armored plates shifted with barely contained disbelief. "Status report," he rumbled. Zarketh's voice came out strangled. "Sir, the human cadet has been inside for 47 minutes and 18 seconds. Stage 4 intensity. Full psychological assault protocol calls active. And he's asleep, sir." Thaxvel's compound eyes focused on the window. They watched in silence as Cade Brennan's chest continued its peaceful rise and fall. Inside the chamber, the walls were showing Earth burning, cities collapsing, oceans boiling. The air was laced with hallucinogens designed to create existential terror. The human cadet looked like he was having pleasant dreams. "That's impossible," Thaxvel said quietly. "Yes, sir," Zarketh agreed. "It should be." 47 minutes, 23 seconds. The record was broken, and it was still climbing. Someone in the back of the observation room whispered the question everyone was thinking. What the hell are humans? That morning, the alarm sounded across the Galactic Military Academy at precisely 0600 hours. Morning formation. 400 cadets from 47 different species assembled in the main courtyard under a sky filled with 3 moons. Cade Brennan stood in the 3rd row of the human contingent, 5th from the left. His uniform was crisp. His boots were polished to a mirror shine. His posture was parade ground perfect. Around him, cadets from across the known galaxy shifted and whispered. The formation was never truly silent. Prelians hummed at frequencies below human hearing. Phylaxians refracted the morning light into rainbow patterns. Thoracian armor plates clicked with each breath. But this morning, the whispers had an edge. Today was evaluation day, the day when cadets received their specialty training assignments. And for some, today meant Chamber 9. The Academy's head of training, a towering Rexian named Carthan, stepped onto the elevated platform. His antenna twitched as he surveyed the assembled cadets. "Attention," he barked. His translator rendered the command in 47 languages simultaneously. The formation snapped to perfect stillness. "As you all know," Carthan continued, "this academy has exactly 3 rules that everyone agrees upon. Rule 1, never touch a Rexian's antenna during morning formation." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the ranks. Rule 2, always double-check your translator before insulting someone in the mess hall. More laughter, louder this time. There were stories about that rule: diplomatic incidents, interspecies brawls. Rule 3, the laughter died instantly. Nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, lasts more than 47 minutes in the torture resistance chamber. Silence, complete and total. Carthan let it hang there for 5 full seconds. "Today, 12 of you will test that rule. Your names have already been posted. Report to your assigned instructors at 0800. Dismissed." The formation broke. Cadets scattered toward the posting boards. Cade walked calmly against the flow. He already knew his name was on the list. He'd volunteered 3 weeks ago. His platoon mate, a Thoraxian named Crixtall, caught up to him. His armored bulk made the crowd part naturally. Brennan Crixtall's translator rendered his clicking mandibles. Tell me you didn't actually sign up for Chamber 9. Cade shrugged. Someone's got to do it. That chamber has broken warriors from species that evolved for combat. My own cousin lasted 19 minutes before he started crying for his hatch mother. And you, Crixtall gestured at Cade's comparatively small human frame. You worked in a factory before this. Automotive assembly, Cade confirmed. General Motors, Detroit. Exactly, you're not a warrior. You're a mechanic. Assembly worker, Cade corrected mildly. Different thing. Crixtall's antenna drooped in frustration. Why would you volunteer for this? Cade stopped walking. He met the Thoraxian's compound eyes. Because if I don't know my limits, how can I trust myself in the field? It was a good answer, a noble answer, the kind of answer the Academy trained them to give. It also wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was simpler. Cade was curious. He'd read the briefing materials. Chamber 9 was designed to break psychology through sensory manipulation, hallucinogens, temperature extremes, and personalized psychological attacks. He'd lived in Detroit, in an apartment with broken heating, paper-thin walls, and neighbors who fought at 2 in the morning. He'd worked double shifts at the GM plant, sleeping on concrete floors during 15-minute breaks while machinery clanged all around him. He wanted to know if the galaxy's worst torture chamber was actually worse than Tuesday in Detroit. But you couldn't say that in morning formation. Just be careful, Crixtall said finally. That chamber, it finds what you're afraid of, and it doesn't let go. Cade nodded. I'll keep that in mind. He walked away, leaving Crixtall staring after him with an expression that might have been pity, or concern, or both. In the 247 years since its construction, Chamber 9 had broken exactly 10,342 sentient beings. Instructor Zarketh had been present for the last 2,817 of them. 16 solar cycles, 23 Earth years, same job, same chamber, same result every single time. He pulled up the holographic records as he waited for Cadet Brennan to arrive at his office. The files scrolled past in chronological order, each one a story of psychological collapse. Subject 8456, Thoraxian warrior, combat veteran, survived 3 planetary invasions, lasted 32 minutes in Chamber 9 before emerging with permanent trauma responses. Subject 9103, Perlian monk, trained in meditation techniques from birth, could sit in active volcano vents without moving, 41 minutes before her mental disciplines shattered completely. Subject 9887, Zarion explorer. His species evolved on a planet with 7 suns and oceans made of liquid metal. He claimed evolution made him indestructible. 19 minutes before he started begging for his egg mother, they had to sedate him. Subject 10,000, Commander Thrakal, Golvian berserker, the toughest being Zarketh had ever tested. 47 minutes, 12 seconds. The record holder. Zarketh had watched Thrakal's video feed 17 times since that day. He'd studied every second, looking for the moment when the unbreakable finally broke. It happened at 43 minutes. That's when Thrakal's eyes changed, when the confidence drained out, when he realized the chamber was stronger than him. He lasted 4 more minutes through pure stubbornness. Then his mind simply gave up. Zarketh closed the files. He looked at the newest entry, still blank except for a name and species. Subject 10343, Cadet Cade Brennan, human, humans, the newcomers. 3 years in the Galactic Alliance and still trying to prove they belonged. Still hilariously unprepared for what the universe actually demanded. Zarketh had tested 4 humans before Brennan. Average time 26 minutes. Perfectly respectable for such a young species. Better than the Zarions, worse than the Prelians. Nothing exceptional. The door chimed. Enter, Zarketh called. Cadet Cade Brennan walked in. He stood at attention with that peculiar human posture that looked uncomfortable but apparently wasn't. His uniform was perfect. His boots were polished. His brown eyes were calm. Zarketh studied him with his primary and secondary eyes. Average height for a human. Maybe 5 feet 10 inches in their measurement system. Dark hair cut military short. Unremarkable brown eyes. Standard build. Nothing about this human suggested exceptional psychological resilience. Sir, Brennan said. Cadet Brennan reporting for psychological endurance evaluation. Sit down, Cadet. Brennan sat, his hands folded naturally in his lap. like he was waiting for a lecture on stellar navigation, not a detailed description of systematic torture. Zarketh pulled up the holographic display. The chamber's specifications rotated in the air between them. The torture resistance chamber, Zarketh began, was designed by the Krillix Combine approximately 200 years ago. It uses a combination of sensory deprivation, sensory overload, psychological manipulation temperature, extremes, sonic disruption, and controlled hallucinogenic compounds to break down a subject's mental resistance. He watched Brennan's face carefully. This was the moment when most cadets went pale. Some started sweating. One Baloran female had actually vomited right there in his office, which was awkward because Balorans vomit through their skin pores. Brennan just nodded. Understood, sir. Zarketh felt his feeding tendrils twitch in irritation. Either this human was incredibly stupid, or he genuinely didn't understand what he was volunteering for. Let me be more specific, Zarketh continued. The chamber has 5 stages. Stage 1 involves environmental manipulation, temperature fluctuations, light patterns designed to induce nausea, sounds that bypass conscious processing and trigger primal fear responses. Brennan's expression didn't change. Stage 2 introduces airborne hallucinogenic compounds. You will see things that aren't real, shadows, movement in your peripheral vision, insects crawling on your skin. Still nothing. Stage 3 accesses your psychological profile. It will project images and sounds specifically designed to trigger your personal traumas. It will show you the people you love in pain. It will make you hear their voices begging you to make it stop. Brennan blinked once. Yes, sir. Zarketh leaned forward. It will convince you that you're dying, that you're already dead, that everyone you care about is suffering because of you. It will attack every single vulnerability you have and use them against you. I understand, sir. No, Zarketh said flatly. You don't. Nobody does. Not until they're inside. He pulled up the statistics. The average time before complete psychological breakdown is 28 minutes and 33 seconds. The record is 47 minutes and 12 seconds held by Commander Thrakal, a Golvian berserker who literally fought a plasma bear with his bare claws during the Andromeda conflict. Zarketh let that sink in. Are you still certain you want to proceed? Absolutely, sir. The feeding tendrils twitched again. They always were like this, confident right up until they weren't. Fine. Zarketh stood. His exoskeleton clicked as he moved a sound that most species found deeply unsettling. Brennan didn't even flinch. Follow me. They walked through the corridors of the training complex. Other cadets stopped their conversations to watch. Everyone always knew where someone was going when they walked with Zarketh at this time of day. A group of Phylaxian students, their crystalline skin refracting the corridor lights into rainbow patterns, fell silent as they passed. One of them whispered something that Zarketh's translator caught. Poor human, doesn't know what he's in for. Brennan's expression didn't change. His heart rate visible on Zarketh's monitoring implant remained steady at 68 beats per minute. Steady, calm, almost bored. Zarketh had seen this before. The false confidence, the bravado. It always disappeared within the first 15 minutes. They descended through 3 levels. Each security checkpoint was more serious than the last. Armed guards, biometric scanners, reinforced blast doors. The torture resistance chamber was located in the deepest level of the facility for a reason. There were regulations about this sort of thing. You couldn't just have a room designed to psychologically break people sitting next to the cafeteria. As they reached the final checkpoint, Zarketh tried one more time. Cadet, there's no shame in waiting. You could take more preparatory courses, undergo additional mental conditioning. I appreciate your concern, sir, Brennan interrupted politely. But I'm ready. Famous last words. The final corridor stretched ahead of them, dimly lit, the temperature noticeably colder. Sound seemed to die here, absorbed by walls designed to contain screams. 50 meters? 40? 30? Brennan's heart rate on the monitor 66 beats per minute. Dropping. 20 meters. 10. Heart rate 62. They stopped at the chamber door. Reinforced durasteel, a small observation window, a control panel that glowed with soft blue light. Zarketh pulled up the control interface. Standard protocol. You'll be in there for a minimum of 10 minutes. If you need to exit before that, there's an emergency release button on the north wall. It glows blue. After 10 minutes, you can leave whenever you want. He paused. The current record is 47 minutes, but I need to stress that there is absolutely no pressure to... What's the maximum time allowed, sir? Zarketh blinked all 4 eyes in sequence. What the maximum time? Is there a limit to how long someone can stay in the chamber? Nobody had ever asked him that question before. Not once in 16 solar cycles. Technically, Zarketh said slowly, the safety protocols require us to extract anyone who remains after 8 hours. But that's purely theoretical. Nobody has ever lasted more than 47 minutes. Brennan nodded like Zarketh had just told him the mess hall hours. So 8 hours maximum. Got it. Cadet, you're not seriously suggesting, I'll do my best, sir. And then before Zarketh could stop him, Cadet Cade Brennan walked into Chamber 9. The door sealed shut with a hiss of pressurizing air. The timestamp on Zarketh's monitor read 0927 hours. Zarketh stood at the control panel watching through the observation window as Brennan looked around the chamber, taking in the blank walls, the subtle patterns of emitter arrays, the slightly too cold temperature. Brennan found the emergency release button, noted its location, then he walked to the center of the floor and sat down, cross-legged, like he was about to meditate, his eyes closed. Zarketh's assistant, a young Brexian named Pelix, scuttled over on her 6 legs. Is that the human cadet? The one from Earth? Unfortunately, yes. What's he doing? I believe, Zarketh said slowly, he's trying to meditate through stage 1. It wouldn't work. It never worked. Meditation required mental discipline, and the chamber was specifically designed to shatter discipline. Zarketh initiated the startup sequence. Standard protocol, stage 1 intensity. The chamber hummed to life. The temperature dropped. 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold enough to be uncomfortable. The lights dimmed and began pulsing at frequencies known to cause unease in 97% of tested species. Subtle sounds echoed from unseen sources. Whispers in unknown languages. Distant screams. The sound of something dragging across metal. Inside the chamber, Cade Brennan's breathing slowed. Sir, Pelix said, her antenna quivering. His heart rate is dropping. Zarketh checked the biometric display. 60 beats per minute, 58, 56. That's unusual, he muttered. Most subjects' heart rates increase during stage 1. Fear response, adrenaline, the body preparing for fight or flight. Brennan's was dropping into what the human medical charts called resting sleep range. 5 minutes passed. The whispers in the chamber grew louder. The temperature swung suddenly to 95 degrees, hot, uncomfortable. Then back to 45. The rapid change was designed to prevent adaptation. Brennan's breathing remained steady, 12 breaths per minute, perfectly regular. Increase to stage 2, Zarketh ordered. Pelix hesitated. Sir, we usually wait until... I know the protocol. Stage 2. Stage 2 introduced the hallucinogens. Airborne compounds carefully calibrated for human neurology. They would create paranoia, visual distortions, the feeling of being watched. The temperature swung wildly now, hot to cold to hot. The sounds grew louder, more aggressive. Whispers became shouts. The walls began displaying images, fragmentary, disturbing, pulled from psychological profiles and designed to trigger trauma responses. Shadows moved in Brennan's peripheral vision. Insects that weren't there crawled across the walls. The floor seemed to tilt, though it remained perfectly level. Brennan's eyes stayed closed. His hands rested gently on his knees. His heart rate stabilized at 58 beats per minute. 10 minutes had passed. This is unusual, Pelix observed, which was the understatement of the solar cycle. Stage 3, Zarketh said quietly. Sir, that's... I know what it is. Activate it. Stage 3 was where most cadets broke. The hallucinogens intensified, creating vivid, horrifying hallucinations indistinguishable from reality. The sonic generators targeted the inner ear, causing vertigo and disorientation, and the psychological attacks became personal. The chamber accessed Brennan's personnel file. Homeworld Earth, birthplace Detroit, North American continent, family Maria Brennan mother, Thomas Brennan father, both factory workers. The chamber processed this information in microseconds. Then it began to build its attack. The walls showed Detroit burning, buildings collapsing, the sky turning red with fire, the sound of explosions, screams in English. A woman's voice processed to sound like, Maria Brennan, Kate, help me. They're hurting me, please. A man's voice, deep and terrified. Son, where are you? I can't find you. The temperature hit extremes, 10 degrees below zero, 120 degrees, back and forth. The chamber filled with the smell of smoke, burning rubber, charred flesh. Phantom pains fired across Brennan's nervous system. The sensation of burning, of bones breaking, of drowning. Inside the chamber, Cade Brennan's breathing hitched. Once, Zarketh leaned forward. There. That was the moment. The moment when the chamber found the crack in the armor. Brennan's breathing settled. His heart rate 56 beats per minute. Sir, Pelix whispered, his brain activity. Zarketh checked the neural monitor. The patterns were unmistakable. Delta waves, theta waves, the characteristic signature of deep sleep. He's entering a sleep state, Pelix said, disbelief coloring her translated voice. He's falling asleep. That's impossible. But the monitors didn't lie. Cade Brennan, subjected to stage 3 intensity psychological torture, was falling asleep. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Word spread through the facility. Other instructors began arriving at the observation window. Cadets clustered in the corridor outside whispering. The human in Chamber 9 was sleeping. Actually sleeping. 40 minutes. Brennan shifted position, adjusted slightly. Then he laid down on his side, using his arm as a pillow. His chest rose and fell in the slow, steady rhythm of REM sleep. 45 minutes. Commander Thaxavel arrived, pushing through the growing crowd. What is the meaning of this? Sir, Zarketh managed. Cadet Brennan has been in the chamber for 45 minutes. Stage 3 intensity. He's asleep. Thaxavel's compound eyes focused on the observation window. They watched in silence as Brennan's chest rose and fell. Inside the chamber, the walls were showing Lovecraftian horrors. The air was cycling between temperatures that ranged from Arctic to furnace. The sonic generators were producing sounds that should have been liquefying his organs. The human looked comfortable. 47 minutes. The facility alarm began to chime. The same alarm that had sounded only once before in 247 years. 47 minutes. 13 seconds. The record was broken. Inside Chamber 9, Cadet Cade Brennan rolled onto his back. He stretched once arms above his head. Then he settled back into sleep. His heart rate 54 beats per minute. Commander Thaxavel turned to Zarketh. His voice was very quiet, very controlled. Explain to me how a human factory worker is sleeping through weapons-grade psychological torture. I don't know, sir. Then find out. Activate Stage 4. Sir, Stage 4 has never been used in standard evaluation. The intensity, I don't care. I want to understand what we're dealing with. Zarketh's manipulator arms moved across the control panel. Authorization codes. Safety override confirmations. Warning messages that he dismissed with trembling appendages. Stage 4. The chamber's walls disappeared. Reality itself became negotiable. The space filled with cosmic horrors that attacked the fundamental sense of self in entities with too many eyes, geometries that shouldn't exist, the feeling of being pulled apart atom by atom. The temperature dropped to -10, then spiked to 120, 30-second cycles. The sonic frequencies targeted bone resonance. The hallucinogens showed the collapse of the universe itself inside Chamber 9. Cade Brennan adjusted his position slightly. He was using his arm as a better pillow. His breathing remained steady, 12 breaths per minute. His brain waves showed healthy REM sleep patterns. He was dreaming. 50 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes. The crowd at the observation window had grown to over 50 personnel. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just watched as the impossible continued to happen. Zarketh stared at his monitors, trying to understand. Every system was functioning perfectly. The chamber was operating at Stage 4 intensity. Enough psychological torture to permanently damage a trained interrogation specialist. And the human cadet from Detroit was sleeping like he was in his own bed. Better than his own bed, actually. The biometrics suggested this was the most restful sleep Cade Brennan had experienced in months. Commander Thaxavel stood perfectly still. His armored plates had stopped shifting. He looked like a statue. Finally, he spoke. Get me Earth's military liaison, now. Sir, I need to know if this is normal for humans, or if we just recruited the galaxy's soundest sleeper. As the communication request went out, Zarketh couldn't stop staring at one detail. When Cade Brennan had sat down in that chamber, his uniform had been crisp and perfectly pressed. Now, 2 hours later, it still was. He hadn't tossed, hadn't turned more than necessary to get comfortable, hadn't shown any of the restless movement that characterized troubled sleep. He was sleeping better in Chamber 9 than Zarketh had slept in his own quarters in the past month. Human Zarketh decided were going to be a problem. A big, incomprehensible, deeply unsettling problem. And that was before they learned what happened next. 2 hours and 17 minutes. That's how long Cade Brennan had been sleeping in Chamber 9 when Dr. Velshara arrived at the observation window. She pushed through the crowd of stunned personnel, her Phylaxian body refracting the corridor lights into scattered rainbows. Her crystalline structure pulsed with colors that indicated deep confusion. Orange, purple, a sickly green that meant her entire understanding of xenobiology was being challenged. She carried her medical scanner, the most advanced diagnostic equipment in the known galaxy, built to analyze neural patterns across 47 different species. She pointed it through the observation window at the sleeping human. The scanner hummed. Data streamed across its display. Chemical balances, brainwave patterns, stress hormones, neural pathway activity. The colors in Dr. Velshara's body shifted to pure white. Shock. Complete and total shock. "Commander," she said quietly, "I need to show you something." Thaxvel moved to her side. Zarketh followed his feeding tendrils, quivering. Dr. Velshara expanded the holographic display from her scanner. Cade Brennan's brain activity filled the air between them in three-dimensional detail. "These are his neural patterns," she explained. "Delta waves here, theta waves here. This signature indicates REM sleep. Deep, restful, restorative sleep." "We can see he's sleeping," Thaxvel rumbled. "That's the problem." "No, Commander. You don't understand." Dr. Velshara manipulated the display, highlighting specific regions. "His amygdala is active. That's the fear center. The chamber is triggering fear responses. His brain is processing the threats, the hallucinations, the pain signals. All of it." She zoomed in on another section. "His prefrontal cortex shows elevated activity. That's conscious processing, analysis, decision-making." "Then why is he asleep?" Zarketh demanded. "Because," Dr. Velshara said slowly, "his brain has categorized all of this as not real. Watch this region here, the hippocampus. That's memory and context processing. Every time the chamber presents a stimulus, his hippocampus compares it to stored experiences. And every single time it labels the chamber's attack as dream, as hallucination, as not requiring a waking response." She looked at them with eyes that suddenly seemed very ancient. "He's not ignoring the torture, gentlemen. He's processing it, feeling it, experiencing it, and then his brain is filing it under the same category as bad dreams. Unpleasant but not real. Not worth waking up for." The white in her crystalline body flickered to dark blue, the color of realization. "Commander," she said quietly, "his brain structure is completely typical for a human. No mutations, no modifications. Standard neural architecture. If anything, he's boringly average." She paused. "Somehow Cadet Brennan trained his brain to process extreme stress as background noise." Commander Thaxvel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 16 years of military command. "How? I don't know, sir, but I think we need to ask Earth." 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. The crowd at the observation window had thinned somewhat. Personnel returned to their duties. But a core group remained. This was history being made. The human who slept through torture. Pelix had started a betting pool on when Brennan would wake up. The Thoraxian cadets bet on 6 hours. The Prillians, ever optimistic about mental discipline, bet on 8. The Phylaxians refused to bet at all, claiming the entire situation violated their understanding of neurology. Inside Chamber 9, Cade Brennan slept. The chamber had cycled through every psychological attack in its arsenal. Twice. It had shown him Earth burning, his family dying, his own body torn apart. It had created phantom pains that should have been unbearable. It had attacked his sense of self, his memories, his fundamental understanding of reality. His heart rate remained at 54 beats per minute. At hour 5 minute 23, something changed. The biometric monitors showed a shift, brainwave patterns fluctuating, heart rate increasing slightly, body temperature rising. "He's waking up," Pelix announced. The crowd pressed closer to the window. Inside the chamber, Cade Brennan's eyes opened. He blinked a few times, slow, confused, the way anyone wakes up from deep sleep. He sat up, rubbed his eyes with both hands, yawned, the kind of full-body yawn that comes after genuine rest. He looked around the chamber. The walls were still displaying cosmic horrors, entities with too many eyes, possible geometries. The temperature was cycling between -10 and 120. The sonic generators were still active. Brennan seemed to notice all of this with mild interest, like someone waking up in a hotel room and remembering where they are. He stood, stretched his back, arms above his head, a series of small pops as his spine realigned. The universal gesture of working out stiffness after sleeping in one position too long. Then he walked calmly to the north wall, to the glowing blue emergency release button. He pressed it. The chamber door opened with a pneumatic hiss. Cade Brennan stepped out into the corridor where 63 personnel from 14 different species were staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to awe to existential horror. He looked at them, looked at the crowd, looked at Commander Thaxavel's massive armored frame. Then he spoke. "Good morning, sir. Where's the bathroom? I really gotta pee." For 5 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The corridor was absolutely silent. Then Pelix, recovering faster than anyone else, pointed one of her 6 legs down the corridor. "Third door on the left." "Thanks," Brennan said cheerfully, and he walked away, humming slightly, like this was completely normal. Like he hadn't just slept for 5 hours and 37 minutes in military-grade psychological torture. His uniform wasn't even wrinkled. Commander Thaxavel turned very slowly to look at Zarketh. His mandibles clicked in a pattern that the instructor had learned to recognize over years of service. Barely contained disbelief mixed with the beginning of anger. That human, Thaxavel said, each word precisely controlled, just slept for 5.5 hours in a chamber designed to break enemy agents under interrogation. "Yes, sir." "He woke up because he needed to urinate." "Correct, sir. Not because of the psychological torture, not because of the physical discomfort, not because of the hallucinations or the sonic disruption." "No, sir. Bladder pressure." Thaxavel's armored plates shifted. A deep breath, the kind that comes before a very long day of paperwork. "Instructor Zarketh, I want a full report on my desk by tomorrow morning. Include every detail, every sensor reading, every biometric measurement, and get me every piece of information we have about human sleep patterns and their ability to ignore external stimuli." "Yes, sir." "And Zarketh," Thaxavel added, turning to leave, "find out if this is normal for humans, or if we just recruited the galaxy's soundest sleeper." 20 minutes later, Cade Brennan sat in interrogation room 3 with a breakfast sandwich from the mess hall. He'd stopped by the cafeteria on his way back from the bathroom, grabbed food, made small talk with the serving staff, complimented the eggs. Several witnesses reported that he'd seemed cheerful, relaxed, like he'd just had a good night's sleep, which technically he had. Now he sat across from Commander Thaxavel, Instructor Zarketh, and Dr. Velshara, 3 of the most senior personnel in the facility, all of them staring at him like he was an alien species, which, to be fair, he was. "Cadet Brennan," Thaxavel began. His voice carried that deep rumble that made most species instinctively nervous. "Do you understand why you're here?" Brennan swallowed a bite of sandwich. "I assume it's about the chamber test, sir. Did I pass?" Silence. The kind of silence that has weight, texture. The 3 senior officers exchanged glances. "You," Thaxavel said slowly, "broke the record by nearly 5 hours. You were asleep for most of that time. Can you explain how you accomplished this?" Brennan looked genuinely puzzled. "I just went to sleep, sir. Was I supposed to do something else?" Zarketh's feeding tendrils twitched violently. "Cadet, the chamber is designed to prevent sleep. It attacks your psychology, creates hallucinations, causes physical discomfort. Most species find it impossible to even sit still, let alone sleep." "Oh," Brennan said, nodding slowly. "Yeah, I noticed some of that. The temperature changes, the weird noises, the visuals." He paused. "But honestly, sir, it wasn't much worse than my apartment back in Detroit." There was a moment of absolute silence. Dr. Velshara leaned forward. Her crystalline body had shifted to a confused purple. "I'm sorry, did you just compare your living quarters to a military-grade torture chamber?" "Well, not exactly comparable," Brennan admitted. "The apartment was actually worse in some ways." He took another bite of sandwich, chewed, swallowed, continued like he was discussing the weather. "The heating was broken, see, so it would swing between freezing cold and way too hot depending on whether my landlord remembered to fix it, which he usually didn't. Walls were thin, paper thin. I could hear my neighbors arguing at all hours. 2 in the morning, someone's screaming about rent money. 3 in the morning, someone else is screaming about an affair." He gestured with the sandwich. "There was construction outside that started at 5 a.m. every single day, 6 months straight, jackhammering. And the apartment below mine had this guy who practiced drums. Badly. At random times. You'd never know when it was coming. 2 p.m. midnight, once at 4 in the morning." Zarketh stared at him, all 4 eyes wide. "Are you telling us," the instructor said carefully, "that you learned to sleep through extreme conditions because of poor housing?" "I guess so, sir. I mean, I worked double shifts at the plant before joining the military. General Motors Hamtramck assembly, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Then I'd go work construction cleanup from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. 4 hours of sleep if I was lucky. And I needed that sleep. Couldn't afford not to sleep. He shrugged. You just sort of learn to tune everything out and crash hard whenever you have the opportunity. If you wait for perfect conditions, you never sleep. So you adapt, see? But the hallucinations, Dr. Velshara pressed. The chamber produces vivid, terrifying images designed to trigger trauma responses. How did you... Oh, I'm used to weird dreams, ma'am. Sometimes when you're that exhausted, your brain does strange stuff. I figured it was just part of the test, so I ignored it and focused on sleeping. Brennan's face was completely earnest, open. No deception, no false bravado. He genuinely didn't understand why this was remarkable. You ignored, Thaxville said flatly, concentrated psychological warfare, because you thought it was a weird dream. Yes, sir. The commander leaned back in his chair. It creaked ominously under his massive thoracian weight. Cadet Brennan, I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you receive any special training for this evaluation? Any techniques, medications, or enhancements? No, sir, just regular academy training. And you genuinely found the chamber comfortable enough to sleep? Well, I wouldn't say comfortable, sir, but I've definitely slept in worse places. At least the floor was flat, and there weren't any bedbugs. Zarketh made a sound that his translator couldn't quite render, something between a laugh and a scream. Dr. Velshara pulled out her medical scanner again. Cadet, I'm going to perform a neurological scan. This won't hurt. She ran the scanner over Brennan's head. The data populated her display. She studied it for a long moment. Her color shifted through the entire spectrum. Confusion, disbelief, resignation. Commander, she said quietly, his neurology is completely normal for a human. No abnormalities, no enhancements, no unusual structures. If anything, he's boringly typical. She looked at Cade Brennan like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. So this is just a human thing? Zarketh asked, hope and dread mixing in his voice. That's what we need to determine, Thaxville said grimly. Cadet Brennan, you're dismissed. Return to your regular training schedule. Brennan stood, saluted. Thank you, sir. He walked out still carrying his breakfast sandwich. The door closed behind him. The three senior officers sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Thaxville spoke. Dr. Velshara, with me. We need to call Earth. The holographic communication chamber was designed to handle sensitive diplomatic exchanges. Secure, private, shielded from external monitoring. Commander Thaxville stood in the center, Dr. Velshara beside him. Zarketh had been ordered to attend as well since he was the primary instructor involved. The connection request went out to Earth, specifically to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the United Earth Forces Military Liaison Office. The hologram flickered, stabilized. A woman appeared, Colonel Diana Cortez, 48 years old according to her file. Gray hair cut military short, dark eyes that had seen entirely too much nonsense. A coffee mug in her hand with text that read, I survived another meeting that should have been an email. She looked tired, the kind of tired that goes bone deep. Commander Thaxville, she said, her voice carried years of exhaustion. What did our cadets do now? Thaxville had prepared a speech, a careful diplomatic explanation of the situation. But looking at Colonel Cortez's expression, he decided to skip straight to the point. One of your cadets, Cade Brennan, slept for 5 hours and 37 minutes in our torture resistance chamber. Cortez blinked, took a sip of coffee, set the mug down carefully. I'm sorry, did you say slept? Yes, Colonel. Our torture resistance chamber is designed to psychologically break enemy combatants. It uses hallucinogens, temperature extremes, sonic disruption, and personalized psychological attacks. The previous record for endurance was 47 minutes. Cadet Brennan slept for 5.5 hours. Cortez was silent for exactly 5 seconds. Then she started laughing. Not polite laughter, not diplomatic laughter. Deep, uncontrollable, cathartic laughter. The kind that comes from years of dealing with impossible situations and finally hearing something that makes all the other insanity make sense. She laughed until she had to wipe her eyes. Oh my God, she managed between laughs. Oh my God, of course he did. Thaxville's mandibles clicked in confusion. I'm sorry, Colonel, this is amusing to you. No, Commander, it's not amusing, it's perfect. It's the most human thing I've heard all year. She took a breath, got herself under control. Where is Brennan from? According to his file, a city called Detroit, North American continent. Cortez laughed harder. Detroit? Of course it's Detroit. Where else would it be? Colonel, Dr. Velshar interjected. Did Cadet Brennan by any chance mention his living conditions before military service? He compared his apartment to the torture chamber, Zarketh supplied, and said the apartment was worse. That tracks, Cortez said, nodding. Commander, let me explain something about humans. Specifically humans from economically depressed urban areas. We adapt. We adapt to everything. She pulled up her own holographic display. Data began to stream. You want to know how humans conquered Earth? We didn't outfight the predators or outthink the environment. We just stubbornly refused to let anything stop us from getting what we needed, including sleep. The display showed images, soldiers sleeping in impossible conditions. These are from our military archives. This soldier here sleeping during a mortar attack in Afghanistan. Temperature 120 degrees. Combat ongoing. He slept 4 hours. Another image. This is from World War I. Trenches in France. Soldiers sleeping in mud while artillery fired overhead. This one slept through a barrage that killed 17 men in the next trench over. Another. World War II. Bomber crew sleeping between missions. Each mission had a 40% casualty rate. They knew they might die in the next few hours. They slept anyway. More images, dozens of them. Soldiers sleeping in Arctic conditions, in deserts, in active combat zones, in vehicles, while standing up, in harnesses during parachute operations. This Marine here, Cortez pointed to one image, fell asleep during his own court-martial. This sailor slept through a hurricane that nearly sank his ship. This soldier slept standing up during formation, and his squad positioned themselves around him to hide it from the officers. She looked directly at the camera, directly at them. They're all like this, Commander. Every human military has documentation of soldiers sleeping in absurd situations. It's not an anomaly, it's a species-wide trait. But the chamber produces extreme psychological stress, Zarketh protested. So does poverty, Cortez shot back. Her voice hardened. So does working 16-hour days in dangerous conditions. So does living in places where violence and noise and chaos are just part of the background. Humans from those environments develop an almost supernatural ability to function despite everything. She pulled up another file. We call it resilience. But honestly, it's more like weaponized stubbornness. Are you telling me, Thaxville said slowly, that humans can be trained to resist torture simply by living in bad neighborhoods? Not trained, Commander. Forged. There's a difference. And it's not just bad neighborhoods. Cortez's expression grew serious. Humans have slept in trenches during warfare, in freezing mountains, in sweltering deserts, in vehicles, in medical facilities while being actively shot at. We have documented cases of soldiers falling asleep during artillery barrages. We have sailors who slept through storms that should have killed them. We have people who worked night shifts for decades and learned to sleep during the day despite noise, light, and every possible disturbance. She leaned closer to her camera. Your torture chamber, you built it to simulate hardship, to create stress and fear and discomfort. You did it to test the strongest warriors in the galaxy. Her voice dropped, quiet, intense. Cade Brennan grew up in Detroit during the automotive industry collapse. Unemployment, poverty, violence. His parents probably worked 3 jobs combined just to keep a roof over their heads. He learned to sleep in chaos because that was the only sleep available. She pulled up economic data, unemployment rates, crime statistics, housing conditions. Detroit post-2008, median household income below poverty line, infrastructure failing, buildings abandoned, services cut. For a kid growing up there, your chamber isn't simulation. It's Tuesday. Thaxville felt something cold settle in his thorax. How many humans grew up in similar conditions? Globally, about 3 billion, give or take. Cortez let that number hang in the air. You want to really test human endurance. Put someone from a comfortable background in there. Middle class, stable family, good education. They'll probably break faster. But someone like Brennan, who grew up learning to function despite chaos, she smiled, thin, sharp. That chamber probably felt like a hotel. Dr. Velshara's colors had gone completely white again. Colonel, are you saying that economic hardship creates military advantages we didn't anticipate? I'm saying that humans weaponize everything, Doctor, including our suffering. Cortez picked up her coffee again. We take trauma and we repurpose it. We take hardship and we turn it into strength. Not because we're noble, not because we're special, because we don't have a choice. She looked at each of them in turn. Commander Thaxville, You need to accept one fundamental truth about humanity. We're persistence incarnate. We're not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the fastest, but we absolutely refuse to quit. And that includes refusing to let anything interrupt our sleep once we've decided we need it. So Brennan's performance is normal, Dr. Velshara asked. For a human from his background, absolutely, you want to understand humans, you need to understand this. Cortez set down her coffee, folded her hands. When saber-toothed cats hunted us, we chased them until they collapsed from exhaustion. When ice ages came, we refused to die. When our cities burned, when our economies collapsed, when everything said give up, we said not yet. Her voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of human history. Cade Brennan is not an exception, Commander. He's not enhanced. He's not special. He's just a survivor. And survivors, we sleep through hell because that's the only sleep we get. There was a long silence. Finally, Thaxville spoke. Colonel, how many of our human cadets have similar backgrounds? Cortez pulled up a file. Of the 127 human cadets currently enrolled, 86 come from economically challenging backgrounds. Detroit, Gary, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Flint, various former industrial cities, Appalachian regions, rural poverty areas, urban decay zones. She looked at the data. 68% Commander. You haven't recruited soldiers. You've recruited survivors, and you tested them with the galaxy's most sophisticated torture chamber, which they're going to sleep through, Zarketh said quietly. Probably, Cortez agreed. You built a torture chamber for species that evolved in safety, in stability, in peace. Humans evolved in chaos. We're pre-adapted to your torture. She smiled again. That same sharp, dangerous smile. You weaponized poverty, Commander, and you didn't even know it. The connection ended. The three officers stood in silence in the holographic chamber, processing what they'd just learned. Finally, Dr. Velshara spoke. Her colors had settled into a deep, thoughtful blue. We need to survey the other human cadets. Test this hypothesis. Agreed, Thaxville said. And we need to completely redesign our torture resistance protocols. If humans can simply sleep through our current systems, we need new approaches. Sir, Zarketh said carefully. What if we can't? What if humans are just fundamentally different in ways that make our traditional methods ineffective? Thaxvel's mandibles clicked, a pattern that meant he was thinking, planning. Then we adapt, he said finally, just like they do. He turned to leave, stopped, looked back at them, and we never ever underestimate them again. 1 week after Cade Brennan slept through Chamber 9, Dr. Velshara stood before a holographic display in the Academy's main briefing room. The data floating in the air represented the most comprehensive survey of human psychology ever conducted outside of Earth. 127 human cadets, every single one currently enrolled at the Galactic Military Academy. The survey had been thorough, exhaustive, background checks, socioeconomic analysis, geographic distribution, employment history before military service, living conditions, family income levels. The results were color-coded across the holographic map of Earth: green for stable economic backgrounds, yellow for moderate challenges, red for significant hardship. The map was mostly red. Commander Thaxvel studied the data with his compound eyes. Zarketh stood beside him, his feeding tendrils hanging still. Neither spoke for a long moment. 86 cadets, Dr. Velshara said quietly. 68%, all from economically challenging backgrounds. She manipulated the display. The red markers clustered in specific regions. Detroit, Michigan, 8 cadets including Brennan. Gary, Indiana, 7 cadets. Cleveland, Ohio, 6 cadets. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 5 cadets. Flint, Michigan, 4 cadets. She paused. Former industrial cities that experienced economic collapse in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. More markers highlighted: Appalachian region, 15 cadets, rural poverty, limited infrastructure, multi-generational economic depression. The display shifted again. Various urban centers, high crime rates, inadequate housing, insufficient public services, 38 cadets total from these environments. Thaxvel's armored plates shifted. What about the other 41? Varied backgrounds, suburban, middle class, some from wealthy families, the full spectrum of human economic experience. Dr. Velshara's colors flickered to orange. I requested volunteers to test our hypothesis. 12 agreed. She pulled up another display. Video feeds, 12 separate chambers, 12 human cadets. We modified Chamber 9 protocols, created identical testing environments. All 12 subjects entered chambers simultaneously at 0900 hours yesterday. The video feed showed the results. Chamber 1, Cadet Rodriguez, background Gary, Indiana. Father unemployed steelworker. Mother worked 3 part-time jobs. Rodriguez had worked in a meatpacking plant from age 16. Time in chamber 7 hours, 42 minutes. Status slept through stages 1 through 4. Woke naturally, requested breakfast. Chamber 2, Cadet Okonkwo, background Detroit, immigrant family from Nigeria. Lived in condemned building for 2 years. No heat in winter, no cooling in summer. Worked overnight security while attending high school. Time 6 hours, 18 minutes. Status slept, woke, asked if the test was over. Chamber 3, Cadet Park, background Los Angeles. Grew up in Koreatown. Parents ran small business that failed. Lived in car for 8 months. Slept in parking lots, studied by street light. Time 5 hours, 53 minutes. Status slept. Reported dreams were less stressful than real life. The pattern continued. Chamber after chamber, cadets from hard backgrounds, all of them sleeping, all of them exceeding the previous 47-minute record by hours. Then Chamber 10. Cadet Morrison, background suburban Seattle. Father was software engineer, mother was doctor, grew up in 4-bedroom house. Private school education, summer camps, college fun, time, 1 hour, 18 minutes. Status completed test, reported severe stress, required medical attention, full recovery expected. 1 hour, 18 minutes, Zarketh said, slowly. That's still longer than most species. But less than a quarter of the time achieved by cadets from hardship backgrounds, Dr. Velshara pointed out. And Morrison comes from what humans consider a privileged upbringing, stable, comfortable, safe. She let that sink in. The correlation is undeniable. Manual labor background adds an average of 2 hours to endurance time. Housing instability adds 1.5 hours. Multiple jobs before military service adds 2.5 hours. High crime residential area adds 1 hour. Thaxville turned away from the display, walked to the window overlooking the training yards. Below, cadets from dozens of species ran through combat drills, physical conditioning, team exercises, humans mixed among them, running, fighting, training. 68% of them carried invisible armor, forged in poverty, tempered by hardship, stronger than anything the academy could build. This changes everything, he said quietly. Yes, sir, Dr. Velshara agreed. Our entire approach to torture resistance training is obsolete for one species. Not just training, Thaxville corrected, our understanding, our assumptions. We built Chamber 9 based on 200 years of testing. We thought we understood the limits of psychology under stress. He turned back to face them. We were testing the wrong subjects. Zarketh's eyes widened. Certain. Every species we tested evolved in relative stability. The Prelians meditate in volcanoes, yes, but their society is peaceful, ordered. The Thoraxians are warriors, but we have honor codes, structure. Even the Golvians, for all their berserker rage, come from worlds with established civilization. Thaxville gestured to the holographic Earth, to the red markers scattered across its surface. Humans, they evolved in constant struggle, intraspecies conflict, environmental hostility, economic inequality, generational trauma. And some of them, like these 86 cadets, they're still living in it. His voice carried weight, certainty. We didn't recruit an exception. We recruited the norm. And the norm for humanity is survival under conditions we would classify as torture. Dr. Velshara's colors shifted to pale blue. Understanding. What do you recommend, Commander? First, new evaluation protocols. Humans require different testing methodologies. Second, establish a new course. Human resilience techniques. Make it available to other species. If humans can teach themselves to function under these conditions, perhaps others can learn. He paused. Third, I want every command track officer to understand what we just learned. This isn't about humans being special. It's about adversity creating capabilities we never imagined. We need to recognize that. Respect it. And the chamber, sir? Zarketh asked. Thaxville was silent for a moment. Then he smiled, a strange expression on a Thoraxian face. Redesignate it. Chamber 9 is no longer a torture facility. Sir, it's a monument to the day we learned that sometimes the strongest armor is the kind you earn by surviving. 3 months passed. The Galactic Military Academy transformed in subtle ways. New courses appeared in the curriculum. Human endurance methodologies, adversity-based resilience training, psychological adaptation under stress. Cade Brennan was recruited to teach some of them. At 22 years old, he became the youngest instructor in Academy history. His class on the first day had 17 students, 12 species, including 3 Thoraxians who had previously mocked human weakness. By week 3, his class had a waiting list. Injury rates in field training dropped 40%. Cadets who learned human breathing techniques, human meditation methods, human approaches to compartmentalization under stress, they performed better, lasted longer, broke less easily. The changes rippled outward, beyond the academy, into Galactic Alliance military doctrine, new training programs, new psychological preparation, new understanding of what resilience actually meant. And at the center of it all, Chamber 9 stood silent, waiting. They'd installed a plaque outside the door. Graduation day arrived with 3 moons rising over the Academy's central courtyard. 400 cadets assembled, 47 species. 3 years of training culminating in this moment. Families filled the observation platforms. Beings from across the galaxy come to watch their children, their siblings, their clutchmates graduate into service. Cade Brennan stood in the 3rd row of the human contingent. His dress uniform was perfect. His boots gleamed, his face was calm. Around him, his fellow humans. Rodriguez, Okonkwo, Park, Morrison, all of them who had volunteered for Chamber 9, all of them who had exceeded expectations. The ceremony proceeded with military precision, awards distributed, honors announced, assignments given. When Cade's name was called, the entire courtyard fell silent. Cadet Cade Brennan, human, top 5% in survival training, excellence in environmental adaptation. Commander Thaxville personally presented the final award. Commendation for exceptional mental fortitude under extreme conditions. The applause was thunderous, not just from the humans, from everyone. Thoraxians clicking their mandibles in approval, Prelians humming in harmony, Phylaxians refracting light in celebratory patterns. Cade accepted the commendation with a simple nod. No speech, no grand gesture, just quiet acceptance, the way he'd accepted everything else. After the formal awards, Commander Thaxville took the podium for his address to the graduating class. He was silent for a long moment, looking out over the assembled cadets, over their families, over representatives from the Galactic Alliance who had come to witness this graduating class. When he spoke, his voice carried across the courtyard without amplification. For 247 years, this academy has trained the finest warriors in the known galaxy. We have built systems to test strength, protocols to measure endurance, chambers to quantify limits. Here he paused. We believed we understood what resilience meant. We were wrong. That got their attention. Absolute silence now. 3 months ago, Cadet Cade Brennan entered Chamber 9, our torture resistance facility, designed to break the strongest minds through systematic psychological assault. The record for endurance was 47 minutes and 12 seconds. Thaxville's gaze found Cade in the ranks. Cadet Brennan slept for 5 hours and 37 minutes. Gasps from the families, the representatives, those who hadn't heard the story. We thought it was an anomaly, an exceptional individual. We were wrong again. Thaxville gestured to the human contingent. We tested 12 volunteers. All exceeded the previous record, some by as much as 7 hours. He let that information settle. We investigated. We researched. We learned something that changed our understanding of strength itself. The commander's voice grew quieter, more intense. These humans didn't resist the chamber through superior genetics, not through special training, not through technological enhancement. They survived because they had practice. He pulled up holographic displays, images of Earth, of Detroit, of Gary, of Cleveland, of dozens of cities in decay, of rural poverty, of economic collapse. These cadets grew up in conditions we would classify as hostile: broken infrastructure, economic hardship, constant stress. They learned to sleep through chaos because that was the only sleep available. They learned to function despite fear because fear was constant. They learned to endure because endurance was survival. Thaxville's voice resonated. Cadet Brennan taught us that resilience isn't about resisting hardship. It's about accepting it. It's not about being unbreakable. It's about bending without breaking. He looked directly at Cade. Sometimes the greatest strength is not fighting the storm. It's sleeping through it. The courtyard was absolutely still. Every eye on the commander. Today, these cadets graduate. They will serve across the galaxy, and wherever they go, they will carry this lesson, this understanding. That strength comes not from avoiding adversity, but from surviving it. Thaxvel's armored plates shifted. The galaxy is full of warriors, strong, fast, killed. But these graduates, these survivors, they bring something else. They bring the knowledge that you can endure anything if you refuse to quit. His voice dropped. Final, certain. Remember this day. Remember what you learned to hear. And remember that sometimes the most powerful weapon is simply deciding that nothing, absolutely nothing, will make you give up. The courtyard erupted. Applause, cheers, the sound of 400 cadets and thousands of family members recognizing a fundamental truth. Cade Brennan stood quietly in the ranks, not smiling, not celebrating, just standing, present, steady, the way he'd always been. After the ceremony, as families dispersed and graduates celebrated, Instructor Zarketh found Cade on the observation deck overlooking the training yards. The younger man stood alone, watching the stars become visible as the 3 moons rose higher. Cadet Brennan, Zarketh said quietly. A moment. Cade turned. Instructor Zarketh, what can I do for you, sir? I wanted to apologize. Surprise flickered across Cade's face. Genuine surprise. For what, sir? When you first walked into my office 3 months ago, I thought you were foolish, arrogant, unaware of the challenge ahead. Zarketh's feeding tendrils hung still. I was wrong. You weren't unaware. You just knew something I didn't. Cade was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke softly. Sir, I was terrified. The whole time in that chamber, I was scared. Now it was Zarketh's turn to be surprised. All 4 eyes widened. You were afraid. Of course, the hallucinations were horrible. The pain was real. The fear was real. I hated every second. Then how? Cade looked back at the stars. Being scared doesn't mean you stop functioning, sir. Fear is just information. It tells you something is dangerous, but I've been scared before. Scared about rent, scared about food, scared about whether my parents would have jobs next month. His voice was steady, matter of fact. In Detroit, there was no emergency release button, no medical staff monitoring my vitals, no safety protocols. You just had to survive. Day after day, week after week, year after year. He turned to face Zarketh. So yeah, I was scared in that chamber, but I've been scared before, and I learned something. Fear passes. It always passes. But sleep helps. Sleep is how you survive to be scared again tomorrow. Zarketh felt something shift in his understanding, a fundamental realignment of perspective. You're not fearless, he said slowly. You're just familiar with fear. Exactly, sir. Cade smiled. Small, genuine. Fear is an old roommate. I know how to live with it. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars, the moons. The vast galaxy spread before them. Your species isn't special because you don't feel pain, Zarketh said finally. You're special because you feel it and keep going anyway. I mean, yeah, Cade shrugged. What else are we going to do, give up? He said it like it was obvious, like giving up wasn't even an option worth considering. And maybe Zarketh thought for humans it wasn't. Thank you, cadet, he said quietly, for teaching an old instructor that he still had things to learn. Cade nodded. Thank you for giving me the chance, sir. They parted ways, Zarketh walking back toward the administrative buildings, Cade remaining on the observation deck, looking up at stars he would soon travel among. 6 months later, Chamber 9 stood in the deepest level of the Galactic Military Academy, but it wasn't silent anymore. Inside, a Brexian cadet named Veltix struggled through minute 17. Her 6 legs trembled. Her antenna drooped with exhaustion. The chamber was only at stage 2, but she was already reaching her limit. In the observation room, instructor Cade Brennan watched the monitors. At 22 years old, he was the youngest instructor in Academy history. His course on human endurance methodologies had a 2-month waiting list. Her heart rate is spiking, his assistant noted. A young Prelian named Chiral. Should we extract? Cade studied the biometrics. No, she's got this. Look at her breathing. She's applying the techniques. He was right. Veltix's breathing, while rapid, followed the pattern they'd taught. In through spiracles. Hold. Out slowly. Repeat. Compartmentalize the fear. Accept the discomfort. Don't fight it. Flow with it. She made it to 23 minutes before hitting the release button. When she emerged shaking but intact, Cade was there. 23 minutes, and he said, last month you managed 11. You more than doubled your time. Veltix's antenna perked up slightly. Really? Really, the chamber hasn't changed. You have. You're learning to coexist with stress instead of being controlled by it. She clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. It's still horrible. Yeah, Kate agreed. It is, but now you know you can handle horrible. That's worth something. Veltix scuttled away to file her report. Kate returned to the observation room, to the wall where they'd installed the plaque 6 months ago. Chamber 9, Cultural Endurance Laboratory record holder. Kate Brennan, human time 5 hours 37 minutes. Method sleep. The greatest strength is not resisting the storm, it's sleeping through it. Below the main plaque they'd added photos. Graduates of the Chamber 9 program. Dozens of species now, all of them lasting longer than they thought possible. Learning techniques that humans had developed through necessity. Cade's photo was at the center, eyes closed, peaceful, sleeping. The image that had shocked the galaxy. His communicator chimed, a message from Rodriguez, now serving on a deep space exploration vessel. Found a habitable planet, named it Gary as a joke. The crew thought it was hilarious. Another message from Okonkwo, stationed at a border outpost, survived a 3-day siege, used breathing techniques to stay calm, saved 17 lives. More messages from Park, from Morrison, from dozens of former classmates now scattered across the galaxy, all of them surviving, enduring, thriving. Cade closed his communicator, looked through the observation window at Chamber 9, empty now, waiting for the next student, the next lesson, the next person who needed to learn that they were stronger than they thought. He remembered that morning, walking into Instructor Zarketh's office, volunteering for a test everyone said was impossible. He remembered being scared, truly deeply scared. He remembered closing his eyes anyway and sleeping, because that's what you did when you were scared and tired and had nowhere else to go. You closed your eyes, you breathed, you let go, you survived. The door opened. Zarketh entered. The instructor moved slower now, age catching up, but his eyes were still sharp, all 4 of them. Another successful test, he observed. Veltix did great, Cade confirmed. She's getting stronger. Zarketh moved to stand beside him, looking at the plaque, at the photos, at the monument they'd built to the day everything changed. I've been a training coordinator for 23 Earth years, he said quietly. I've seen thousands of cadets, dozens of species, every kind of warrior and scholar and specialist. He turned to look at Cade, and I thought I understood strength. Then a factory worker from Detroit taught me I understood nothing. I just slept, sir. You survived, Zarketh corrected, against conditions designed to break anyone. You survived because you'd been surviving your whole life, and you didn't even know how remarkable that was. Cade was quiet for a long moment. Detroit taught me that you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond. I chose to sleep, to rest, to survive so I could wake up and try again. That, Zarketh said, is wisdom the galaxy needed to hear. They stood together in the observation room, teacher and student, alien and human, both of them watching Chamber 9, the monument to the day the galaxy learned that sometimes the greatest warriors aren't the ones who fight hardest. They're the ones who simply refuse to give up, even if that means sleeping through hell. Especially if that means sleeping through hell. Outside, the 3 moons rose higher. Stars wheeled overhead. The galaxy turned, and across hundreds of worlds, thousands of stations, millions of lives, the lesson spread. Resilience isn't about strength, it's about stubbornness. It's about closing your eyes when everything says you should stay awake. It's about breathing when breathing is hard. It's about surviving today so you can survive tomorrow. It's about being too tired to quit and too stubborn to die. The galaxy was full of warriors. Cade Brennan taught them to be survivors. And in the end, survivors always outlast warriors. Always.